Okay guys, so the garage is coming along really nicely. Only have a few things left to do. On the list to complete this is we got to get an air hose reel installed and up in the ceiling. Decided to add a little bit more lighting on the cabinets. Need to get the countertops sorted and squared away. There's a stain that's going to go on those. Walk you through that. And we've got to get the tools organized with the tool grid system. So first thing we're going to do is work on the air hose reel, take you through the process, how I'm going to get that mounted. Okay, so this is an air hose reel that I actually had way before this build. As you can see actually on the top here, this used to be mounted to the floor. This is leftover adhesive, so it used to be back in this section right around here, obviously before it looked a lot like this. And you know, I would pull it out and fill tires, and it worked pretty well being on the ground, but in this case, I want to get as much up off the ground as possible. So very much like we did with the electrical reel here, mounted this up top, pull down, you know, super convenient. We are going to put the air hose reel right here. So I've already mounted a plate, which you can see there. The connection point of this is about 5 inches by 6 inches. So I've created a base plate, put a lot of very long screws in there. So it's attached to this beam, which obviously is super sturdy and part of the structure. And then this plate's got very long screws in it, and many of them. And then I'm gonna put some bolts through here. I was thinking about using just some standard stuff, but this thing is pretty heavy. Very beefy, as most of these are, and so I want to make sure that we're going to be good. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to take this drill bit and drill some holes through that plate in the ceiling, and I'm going to use some toggle bolts with some washers in those locations that you see on the air hose reel, just to make sure that that thing doesn't go anywhere. The reason especially being in the ceiling, I mean, if this thing falls, it's going right into that, and we definitely don't want that to happen. So I'm gonna get that all rigged up and kind of show you the final product there. I'm also gonna need to run the air line from basically this location here, where it's gonna be mounted all the way down this beam, down the side of the roof line, and with a wire mold down to the compressor, which is where we located there. So we'll get this project knocked out, and then we'll probably move on to some under cabinet lighting next. So one thing I have decided to do before we hang this, you can see this one's white, this electrical reel. So I actually refinished this. It was like a yellow, bright yellow color. You know, it kind of comes that way, but I thought it would look really clean if everything in the ceiling really has had this white look, obviously minus the fan. So in the spirit of that, I am going to take the time to refinish this hose reel as well. This one's black. It's a little less objectionable, less bright than the yellow, but I think it's gonna look super clean and white. So this is basically how I did both of them. You know, it's pretty straightforward, but tape off obviously what you don't want to paint, which in this case is the hose, and take a little bit of all-purpose cleaner. In this case, I'm using a little eraser and a rag. Clean this down really well. Eraser works well for this because it is an IPA solution, so it's going to take off like grease or anything from this hose, which it does have a little bit of, and then spray it with sort of spray paint of your choice. I'm going with a white satin primer paint in one. Makes it super easy. Should be pretty durable, and worst case I can always touch it up if it gets dirty over time. But yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and treat that, and while that's drying I'll probably walk you through the under cabinet lighting install. Okay, so that's out drying. We're gonna work on the LED under cabinet lighting. So basically, this was a great idea for my father-in-law, who was over touring the garage the other day for Father's Day weekend and said, hey, it'd be super cool if there was a glow coming from under here. Now, truth be told, usually I'm not a fan of this kind of thing because I think it looks, I don't know, a little tacky, but I actually do like the concept a lot because I went to the trouble to elevate these cabinets off the ground. I think it would create a very cool effect and really like accentuate the fact that these are elevated, number one. Number two is when I'm detailing and stuff like that, it's really nice to have the amount of light I have in here. So I can go ahead and take these and turn on the overheads and just get a lot of light in this space. I mean, it's super well lit. But if I'm not really like doing detailing or a project, maybe I'm just out here, I don't know, hanging out, or, you know, just doing a quick kind of touch up on the wash, you know, just like a simple dry where I don't really need like a lot of light, things like that. What I actually find really nice is the ability to kill these lights, all the lights overhead, and just have these LED lights on the workbench on, and, you know, maybe the TV going. And I think that it could really add to the overall feel and look to then also have LED underneath. So this is kind of like a low light, more, you know, kind of ambient lighting kind of setup that would still allow me to do stuff out here and, you know, work on some things but not go crazy. So I think we're gonna install this, see how we like it. So here's a rundown of what comes in this kit. I got this one on Amazon. It is 6 meters, 20 feet. The length of this is 150 inches. Okay, so just over 10 feet, call it 12 feet-ish. So plenty of length. Some of these come in like 300 feet length, so don't need that obviously. But you get a plug, transformer plug here, the LED light tape, and a remote. The reason I went with this kit in particular is because it's got a whole range of different options from a cool to a warm, but it does allow me to put this at 4000 K according to the packaging, which is the light color of these overhead lights that I've got across all the beams. And so that way it'll match all the lighting in here. So that's considered like a daylight color, more or less. You can go 5600 in garages. I decided to go to about 4000. It's a little more white than it is bluish. But that was based somewhat on the lights I already had, which were 2 of these and these 2. So I just had to add 2 more, in addition to the fact that I actually kind of like the whitish light. I know for detailing, like hardcore detailers doing a lot of polishing and stuff into the 5000s or even 6000 is better. But I'm a little bit more of a hobbyist, a little bit more of a DIY mods and oil change and all that. And I think 4000 is going to be a little easier on the eye. So we will get this run. Basically, we're going to run the light tape all the way under the front side of this. We're going to adhere it to the bottom with just some adhesive. I've got some tape that I can use. This stuff is super light, so it's very easy to adhere. So we're going to run it end to end, and then we will pop it up inside one of these cabinets, all of which have power in them. There are strips inside almost all of these. So we'll run it up in the cabinet, plug it in, and fire it up. It should be super simple. So we'll get going. Got power here. We just ran that down through the cabinet and underneath so it can daylight. Plug into this transformer here. And then we'll run this stuff under. Like I said, this stuff's super light. You can cut this wherever you need to on these marks. All right, well, that is the final product. I'm really liking this look. Definitely adds a nice accent underneath the cabinets as expected, and I think it matches the existing lighting for both the small lights on the counter and the overhead lights quite nicely. It is adjustable, so I put this at kind of midpoint. It can get a little cooler, it can also get a little warmer, but again, I think that matches quite nicely. So simple upgrade, took like 5 minutes. If any of you have ever worked with this LED light tape, it's really straightforward. So liking that as just an element of, I don't know, kind of interest to the under cabinet area, and I'm sure it'll look really good at night. So we'll go take a look at the hose reel and check on that, see if it's dry and ready to install up in that location. All right, so hose reel's up. Really liking the look. The red and white actually looks super nice. So very convenient now that we've got power and air in the center of the garage. Still need to run the line over the compressor, but that'll be super simple. So working on the counters now, just to recap, we're gonna do 3 sections here. Each of these is gonna end up being 50 inches, which works out nicely. This whole thing ended up being 150 inches. So 3 sections of 50, 50, 50, 2 seams. Gonna stain this a nice color. So in order to get that done, I took the sections that I had and cut them down. So I just used like a guide and actually taped this. This is kind of a trick. that if you tape that, you're much less likely to splinter off, you know, top sections of the top, especially when you're going through with just like a standard circular saw. So I use a circular saw with a decent number of teeth, cut that off, and sanded the whole thing with 60, which is, you know, pretty robust. But what you really want to be sure you do is you want to take the factory finish off of this piece of wood, and you want to make sure it's all off. I've done this a couple different times, and mistakes in the past have definitely been on the prep side, not removing all the factory finish. It's on there pretty well, you know, because they use obviously a machine process and like a factory to really apply this and make it durable and heavy duty. So I don't have a bunch of people returning this saying, hey, my finish failed. So you really need to use something pretty aggressive to take off that finish. If you don't, the issue is that this new stain will not penetrate evenly and you'll have splotchiness. So did several passes with the 60, used a tack cloth to wipe it off, came back with a 220. And then the next thing we're doing is pre-stain. And so I always use this wood conditioner for pre-stain. Really helps to get a much more even and rich stain. So we put this on, we let this sit for about 5-10 minutes, wipe off any excess, and then we're gonna be ready to put the actual stain on. Then we'll follow back behind that with several layers of polyurethane. I got a water-based satin. So water-based because the oil-based does tend to yellow over time. And then I went with a satin. I like satin sheen. I'm not a huge semi-gloss and gloss fan unless it's on the right application. But secondly, you know, you're gonna be doing work on this counter. It's gonna get beat up, scratched up. You're gonna like drop tools on it, be cutting stuff against it, you know, just it's likely to get scratched. So in a satin, that's probably gonna be less visible. You know, the higher the sheen goes in terms of like semi-gloss to gloss, the more like imperfections and scratches and stuff will catch the light and show. So we went with a satin just to hide the wear and tear over time. So we'll get the conditioner finished, we'll get it stained, we'll get the polyurethane coat on there, and I'll show you final product on this section, and then we'll have 2 sections to go. Okay, so a lot more luck with this piece of wood. I stained the other side of this. It was super blotchy. Was really struggling with it, to be honest. Wasn't quite sure what was going on, so went with a little different technique, started doing some research, and it turns out, and this is on me, but I was trying to use wood conditioner. So basically, these are Husky cabinet counters, so they're 18 inches deep, so they're the proper depth for the Husky cabinets I have. They're the tops that you can buy by themselves to create a floating workbench, or a lot of people like nestle them here and then put rolling cabinets underneath, things like that. So they're not expensive. They run about $100-ish a piece. I was gonna use 3 of them to create one long contiguous counter, but I want it stained in this dark walnut, like a richer, darker color to go with the blacks and the grays, but to still give it a little warmth. So not too dark, not like a ebony or like a Jacobean black. So I stained the other side of this thing. It was super blotchy. I was wondering what the heck is going on. And so it turns out that, you know, I basically sanded this, okay, removed all the finish, and then used a wood conditioner and stained it, and it was blotchy. So I went back, flipped this over. Luckily, I can just use the other side. And instead, this time I used a stripper. So first I put a stripper down, let it sit for about an hour, hour and a half, then use an angled scraper to scrape off as much of the factory finish as possible. I was thinking that the factory finish may be so robust because it's designed for, you know, tools and all that kind of stuff, that I didn't get all of it off. So went to the scraper and stripper method. Honestly, there was still a decent amount of factory finish left, but then I sanded it with 60 grit, which I did on the other side, but I did a little slower, a little more even this go around, hit it with a tack cloth. And the one thing I changed, which I think made the difference, is that the wood conditioner step I skipped. And I skipped it because I had Minwax wood conditioner and Varathane stain in dark walnut. And as I was doing my research, I was actually just trying to figure out if you could mix brands of wood conditioner and stain, but my research pointed out that you actually need to be careful you're not mixing types. So lesson learned, I always learn at least one of these on one of these projects, but water-based, oil-based, I know stains come in both of those. I had no idea they made wood conditioner in 2 types. I've always thought they're universal. Call me an idiot, whatever you want in the comments, but Didn't know that. So I skipped the conditioner altogether, and as you can see, we got a nice, uniform, even stain on this. So super excited about this. We're gonna let this dry for overnight at least. Then we're gonna use a water-based poly with probably at least 2 coats, maybe 3. I wanna get this super durable. I'm going with a satin finish, so I don't want this to be overly shiny or flashy. I want it to kind of look a little bit weathered. Not like super rustic, but also not like brand new or too new. So we'll let this dry, but just thought I'd check in. And for those of you who are looking to stain stuff, didn't know the difference between water and oil-based wood conditioners, now you know.